This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, globally, markets are not sure whether to bet on an economic recovery in the US and other developed markets or worry about a surge in COVID-19 cases in countries such as India. Now, as a result, emerging market stocks rose 0.2% after marking their worst day in nearly 2 weeks on Wednesday. In South Africa, the JSE lost steam after opening higher with all major indices down on the day. We saw the resource index was down almost 1% today. Now, also coming up on today's show, Nigeria commits to end fuel subsidies. What does this mean for its economy? Zimbabwe to create a $5 billion tobacco industry in 3 years. And what more can you do with your hoodie? Well, we'll meet a Kenyan innovator with a few more options. Well, let's start off today's show in Nigeria, where the government has given its commitment to the International Monetary Fund to end petrol subsidies as part of conditions to access a $3.4 billion loan. Now, the agreement will also end subsidies in the electricity sector by mid-2021. While CGTN's Deji Batmus, however, reports that, like the past, the move is likely to face resistance.
If there's one issue every Nigerian government in the past has had a running battle on with labor unions in the country, it is petrol subsidy. Every attempt to remove it had always met fierce resistance from the unions and quite a number of Nigerians. The present government is currently locked in a long-drawn negotiation with the unions over its plans to remove both petrol and electricity subsidies, and it's not finding it easy convincing the unions.
It is clearly impossible for government to continue to subsidize. The money is not there now.
According to a report by PwC Nigeria, the government spent about $10.3 billion on petrol and electricity subsidy between 2015 and 2019. The government is now determined to finally end the subsidies as part of the conditions for an IMF loan. An attempt to increase electricity tariff early this year was met with widespread resistance from the unions and the public, forcing the government to put the plan on hold. Another plan to also increase petrol price also generated strong public reactions, and the government had to suspend it as well.
We're engaging all parties and all stakeholders as government, and to make sure that at the end of the day, there's an exit that is beneficial to the ordinary man.
It's a tough nut for the government to crack because removing the subsidies would literally lead to the increase in the price of petrol and electricity tariff, something the public is strongly opposed to.
With due respect to IMF, Nigerians require subsidy. We require subsidy in health, we require subsidy in education, we require subsidy in transportation, we require subsidy in energy. We are looking at our own peculiarities.
But some experts say Nigerians must be ready to bite the bullet once and for all and allow the subsidies to go.
It has to be done at some point. Now, I say that what the government should actually do is take that money that they were using to subsidize the industry and increase the minimum wage, increase the infrastructure, other infrastructures in the country like roads, healthcare, education, improve those other services that would help Nigerian people.
The issue is still an ongoing debate. The government is currently promoting alternative fuel like auto gas to cushion the effect of the removal of petrol subsidy. On the issue of electricity tariff, it is carrying out mass metering across the country so that consumers are only charged for what they consume. All of this in readiness for the final removal of the subsidies, which is expected to happen sometime this year. Deji Batmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And heading to Zimbabwe now, the country is aiming to create a $5 billion tobacco industry by 2025. Now, already the country's second highest export earner, the golden leaf, is tipped to become even more important as the government intensifies its efforts to increase production and add value to the crop. From Harare, here's Farai Makutuya with the details.
A good rainy season is expected to propel tobacco deliveries to 200 million kilograms, up from 135 million in 2020. About $800 million will be generated. Because of that export earning capacity, Zimbabwe wants to significantly grow the industry over the next 5 years.
Tobacco farming has been a success story in terms of like small or communal, farmers in terms of their engagement to the sector. So building on that would make sense. But the manner in which it has to be done also requires expanding markets, because the major markets will be the likes of China and things like that. But then there's need to also go beyond that and expand markets, but also capacity, and also improve some of the payment modalities, because by the end of the day it should be profitable for the farmer.
Payments have been a persistent bone of contention. This year, farmers will get 60% of their proceeds in US dollars, well below the 80% they had wanted.
Why is it that farmers are clamoring for that? You understand that all the inputs that the farmers actually use, and even the machinery, is actually bought using US dollars. And even the loans that they borrow, everything is charged in US dollars. So you find that the farmers, what entails the farmers are supposed to also get 100% payment.
Farmers say the 40% they receive in local currency is converted at the official exchange rate, while most suppliers peg their prices at the much higher parallel market rate. The prevailing payment arrangement could scupper the $5 billion target.
That figure, to be realistic, is still away from us unless we put all the fundamentals that I have actually mentioned right. Then we can actually see a growth. There will be a slightly growth, of course, but I don't see us hitting the 250 or 300 million, that unless those fundamentals have been addressed, then we can talk of a huge crop.
Government is heavily dependent on tobacco revenues to bolster sparse foreign currency reserves. Farai Makutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, Farai now joins us in Harare with some more insight into this news. Great to have you with us, Farai. Now, of course, the government is saying that its strategy is to increase funding as well as reform the market, improve transparency in marketing of tobacco as well, amongst others. Now, how are stakeholders responding to this plan, and does the plan hit at the heart of tobacco farmers' struggles in Zimbabwe?
Well, Uche, I can tell you that issues to do with transparency and tighter regulation of finance and credit that is extended to farmers are crucial to contractors and the buyers. There have been issues of side marketing where contractors have extended finance to farmers, and at the end of the season, those farmers end up selling their products to middlemen who have not invested anything whatsoever in the production of that crop. And so several contractors have had their fingers burnt. I think if there's tighter regulation, if there's more transparency around issues of contracting as well as side marketing and finance, that will give comfort to these buyers and these contractors to be able to extend more credit to more farmers, which will also result in more hectareage being put under the crop and production going up. So that will address that side of things. On the farmer side, I think there have been these contentions and these cries about how farmers get paid. Obviously, the issues of retention and how much they get paid in US dollars is something that they would like to see more, a higher threshold so they can become more viable. But I think in addition to that, I think government should also look to address issues of capacitating the farmers in two ways. Number one, training in terms of business and entrepreneurship. A lot of these are very communal, very small-scale farmers who may not have the appreciation of farming as a business. So if they were, given training so that they can understand their business cycles better, cash flows, projections, cash flow management, and things like that, I think that would also increase their viability and improve their performance. But also, in addition to that, there is a need to address the quality side. So capacitating in terms of training the farmers through government extension services. I think more could be done to get farmers to produce a better quality crop. There has been an increase in volume, but also I think the quality that is addressed, then that will also realize higher revenues. Uche.
Well, let's look at the overall outlook for the sector. Already, tobacco production is expected to boom this year, according to official channels, to grow at about 9%. Do experts really feel that this signals a rebound in the industry going forward, even despite the fact that we know smoking is sort of plateauing in many rich nations right now?
Well, Uche, when you speak to stakeholders in the industry, they remain upbeat. They are very, bullish about the future, and I think that is because they continue to see more demand from their traditional source markets. And so each and every year, these contractors and buyers keep coming and requiring more and more product, more and more volume from the Zimbabwean market. And I think that is what is giving players in the sector more confidence. I think, those issues of the anti-tobacco, anti-smoking ban and that lobby, I think stakeholders here see that as something that will, take some time to come into full effect. But also they keep saying that, smoking is a lifestyle choice that people may continue to make going forward. But beyond that, I think obviously to mitigate, as you say, the plateauing in demand, the plan also, which has also been enunciated by government here, is to move up the value chain, the tobacco value chain. So processing and value addition of the tobacco is something that they will try to do to offset, if there is a reduction in terms of volumes. But if there is more production and processing, production of cigarettes, for instance, or at least a semi-processing of the tobacco, the industry can continue to see viability and to see profits.
Well, on the ground, Agriculture Minister Masuka mentioned the fact that the government had noted that the production of tobacco by independent smallholder farmers has been on the decrease over a few years. What does this signal? Are we seeing farmers shying away from tobacco to other cash crops? Give us a sense of what's behind this.
Well, I think, it has been a combination of factors that has contributed towards that. I think the most crucial one is the point I made earlier about payments. A lot of these tobacco farmers would like to be paid in hard currency. And, in the last couple of years, they've been shifting of goalposts. At one point, they were told they would be paid fully 100% of their proceeds in US dollars. And then the rules changed. They were told that they'll only get half of that. And even when they do get paid, the payments are not on time. There are delays in that. That has frustrated a lot of farmers. But it has also, made them incapable of going back into the field on time. And so because the farmer is waiting on their payments, which are delayed, because the farmer is getting their payments in local currency and can't then can't go and buy their inputs in hard currency, that, becomes a hindrance and hampers them and stops them from going into the field on time to be able to produce for the next year. And so they end up turning to another crop. I think that has been the major driver. COVID-19, we cannot also discount the impact that COVID-19 has had over the last year and coming into this year where, farmers have had challenges with that. But I think as a whole, I think the issue of viability is the big frustration that farmers have. And if that is addressed, if the issues of how farmers are paid, in what currency they get paid, if they get paid on time, and if there are measures put in place to ensure that, they can be able to get something at the end of the day, then I think more and more farmers will return. Those who've left will return and more will come on board. Because as it stands, besides cotton, tobacco remains the most viable and profitable cash crop in this country.
Well, we do have to leave it there, Farai. Many thanks for your insight. That's Farai Makutuya joining us there in Harare. And moving on now, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his Congolese counterpart, Felix Tshisekedi, have officially opened Equity BCDC Bank in the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, Equity Bank is headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, and President Kenyatta is in Kinshasa for a 3-day state visit in order to enhance bilateral ties between Kenya and the DRC. Here's CGTN's Chris Ochamringa with more on that report.
President Uhuru Kenyatta arrived in the DRC capital, Kinshasa, on Tuesday to discuss ways of strengthening trade relations between the two countries. He was hosted by DRC President Felix Tshisekedi. The two leaders held talks about improving trade relations in the energy, mining, agriculture and construction sectors. They officially inaugurated Equity BCDC Bank in Kinshasa. The commercial bank's majority shares were bought by Kenya's Equity Bank Group last year at $95 million. It has now become the DRC's second largest financial institution. President Kenyatta is also expected to sign a military cooperation agreement with President Tshisekedi. The leaders plan to have a joint military campaign to end the conflicts in eastern DRC and boost trade in the region. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Meanwhile, the national airlines of Kenya and the Democratic Republic of Congo have also signed a partnership agreement. Kenya Airways and Congo Airways will partner in areas of mutual interest, including aircraft maintenance, training, and sharing of excess capacity. Well, let's now shift focus to other corporate headlines today. South Africa's Nedbank says that it plans to halt financing of new thermal coal mines by 2025, and that's amid adoption of a new energy policy. Now, it is also expected to cut direct funding of new oil and gas exploration projects with immediate effect. This comes amid growing pressure from environmental groups to stop funding fossil fuel power projects. And Emirates Airlines is expected to suspend flights between Dubai and India for 10 days from Sunday, and that's amid the deadly surge in COVID-19 cases in India. The move comes days after Britain imposed its strictest travel curbs on India and after UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson called off a trip to New Delhi. France has also said it will impose a 10-day quarantine for travellers arriving from India. And the UK's Jaguar Land Rover is set to halt production at Halewood and Castle Bromwich for at least a week, and that's due to a shortage of computer chips. The company is expected to continue to monitor its chip supply before committing to a reopening date. Now, demand for semiconductor chips has gone up during the COVID-19 pandemic. And finally, German Finance Minister Olaf Scholz says that he did not see himself responsible for the Wirecard scandal, and that's despite being the ultimate head of Germany's Financial Oversight Authority, BaFin. This follows the parliamentary inquiry launched by lawmakers to seek details into the implosion of a company once seen as a German success story worth about $28 billion. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's head into a short break now, still coming up on the show. Kenya's flower farms turn to solar energy as the world marks Earth Day. And poultry producers in South Africa are worried about the impact of an outbreak of avian influenza.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay, we'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra Nairobi. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how whole stories begin. See how they end only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Welcome back. Now, farmers in Nigeria are amongst those in Africa who have suffered climate change-related losses that are estimated at between $7 to $15 billion each year. The African Development Bank says that the impact of climate change on the continent could lead to $50 billion in losses each year by 2040. Now, correspondent Philly Haza has more details on that from Abuja.
This vast and lush vegetation is owned by Solomon Ekwo. Due to the delay in rainfall this season, Solomon says he has had to spend a fortune tapping water from this river for his crops.
In my 10 years of farming, I've not witnessed a delay in rainfall as I have this season. It has made me spend so much on buying fuel, fixing my generator, and producing these vegetables to sell and make a profit.
The majority of farmers in Nigeria still depend on rainfall as a source of water for farming. This has made them vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change like drought and flooding, creating unfavorable conditions for crop production and leading to food shortages and price rises in Nigeria. The AFDB has launched an Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program aimed at mobilizing $25 billion to help scale up access to modern farming methods for at least 30 million farmers in Africa, including in Nigeria. But experts say more steps have to be taken.
It's not about what African Development Bank wants to do and how much money is being put forward or what the World Bank is doing and how much they're putting forward or what anybody is doing. It's about critical actions. So when it comes to raising awareness and consciousness, I think we've done fairly well. It's not just about federal government. No, every one of us has a role.
Experts say until farmers in Nigeria are taught how to modernize farming processes like irrigation, hydroponics, and processing, the problem of climate change will continue to overwhelm them.
So if people know that, hey, the rain will not come, are there systems to save rainwaters when they're available? Are there systems to transport water and, use them? And this is where, developing countries should also become a lot more responsible in technology transfer. It's not enough for, for developed parts of the world to have all the solutions and technology without, transferring and exchanging this knowledge with developing countries that suffer the most or the brunt of the problem.
President Muhammadu Buhari has restricted credit facilities to farmers importing food or fertilizers.
Rather, a directive has been given to the Central Bank of Nigeria to focus more on funding local farmers, which will in turn reduce food prices in the market and prevent starvation in the country.
Solomon hopes that will feed through into higher production levels despite the impacts of climate change. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
And to South Africa now, where poultry producers are worried about the impact of an outbreak of avian influenza. The latest infection of the bird flu was detected on a chicken farm east of Johannesburg just over a week ago. Some countries neighboring South Africa have already suspended poultry imports. Health and agricultural authorities are also trying to contain the flu. But as many of these countries head into winter, the threat of a further infection remains high. Here's Sumitra Naidu with more.
The avian influenza was detected at an egg-producing farm in Gauteng last week. Samples tested positive for the H5 strain of the virus, which is similar to the outbreak that occurred in 2017. The farm has been placed under quarantine after around 300 birds were culled.
Poultry meat is not affected at this point in time. They don't have the outbreak on a broiler farm. It's on an egg farm. This particular farm of 240,000 hens represents less than 1% of the national flock of egg-laying hens in South Africa.
3 neighboring countries have already banned poultry products from South Africa. This includes Mozambique, which relies on 70% of its egg supply from South Africa.
It's most unfortunate that they have imposed an outright ban, unlike Namibia, in our opinion, who's been the most sensible of all, in that they have banned products from a particular, what they call a compartment or an area where surrounding this farm that was diagnosed with HPAII. So the rest of South Africa for Namibia is still open to export to.
Test results have shown that the flu is highly pathogenic and can spread. On Monday, authorities visited another site where 24 birds have died in the last 24 hours.
Risks that it actually presents in my space is that if it actually is not contained within the area that it actually broke out in, and it manages to get to my farm, then it could in turn affect my investment.
In January, Subanda discovered that a common respiratory disease was affecting her flock, resulting in crippling losses to her new operation.
I had a batch of about 2,500 chickens, and out of the 2,500 chickens, we lost about 900 chickens in a space of 2 weeks. And at some point we had to, as an entrepreneur, I had to come to a point where I had to make a decision. What do I do, especially with the older birds? Because as you know, with older birds, you can't really cure them. So you have to decide, okay, do I stop administering medication and slaughter 1,000 birds? Who am I going to sell 1,000 birds to as a small scale farm? I had to slaughter those birds. And luckily, we managed to contain the actual disease, and we had to tighten up our biosecurity.
Poultry exports fell 20% after the last outbreak in 2017. The industry has recovered since, with exports to SADC countries pushing 54,000 tons in the last year. But there are concerns that this outbreak could cause another decline if it is not contained soon.
There was tremendous loss of livelihood in that period. But we've learned a lot since then in terms of the biosecurity protocols and the quarantine protocols.
Farmers are calling on government to initiate a vaccine program. Birds carrying the disease are flying from countries going into winter, making it very difficult to manage. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, a group representing 800 Chinese companies say they want to invest in Tanzania. They held a meeting with President Samia Suluhu Hassan in the country's capital, Dodoma. Here's CGTN's Isaac Lukando with the story.
The Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Tanzania has congratulated President Samia Suluhu Hassan on becoming Tanzania's 6th president. Its over 800 members say they are keen on investing in a number of projects in the country, including the manufacture of mobile phone handsets.
We are having some plan to set up big industrial park into the country, and in the industrial park we'll be having a very big number of factories to manufacture different products ranging from like mobile phones, pharmaceuticals, even assembly of cars, and other kind of products.
The chamber says it also envisages enabling Tanzanians to acquire skills through an education program that will provide opportunities to study in Tanzanian and Chinese universities. It is also expressing optimism over Tanzania's economy.
Tanzania will be now going to a fast track of economy development. And from our Chinese community, we know that all the people are reacting very positively, that the country now is going right direction towards economic development. This is what we are excited and we are hoping for.
China is already the largest foreign investor in Tanzania. Figures from the Tanzania Investment Center show that it now leads with investments worth $5.9 billion. On her part, President Hassan says the government will work to resolve various issues that affect the flow of investments in the country. These include work permits, tax, delays in payments for delivered service, red tape, as well as taking precautions against the COVID-19 pandemic. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
You're watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a short break now, but still to come. Dozens of world leaders come together for the virtual Leaders Summit on climate. And industrial 3D printers are being used to create affordable and sustainable homes in the U.S.
taken me completely out of my depth. But at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
And just about 1:30, let's recap other news-making headlines. France's foreign minister has defended the military takeover in Chad. This is despite objections from members of the opposition in the Central African nation. Now, Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian has described the takeover as necessary for security amid exceptional circumstances. And Libya's unity government is facing obstacles in unifying its formerly divided state institutions. The Libyan National Army has so far refused to merge with forces in western Libya to create a unified military. Now, the LNA says that foreign fighters must first be evacuated before considering such a move. And more than 27 million people in the Democratic Republic of Congo are facing acute hunger. That is according to a new study conducted by the World Food Programme and the Food and Agriculture Organization. The UN agencies say the Central African nation is now home to the highest number of people in urgent need of food aid. And finally, Zimbabwean authorities have expressed reservations about a recent report from the International Union for Conservation of Nature. The report has added both species of the African elephant to the red list of threatened species. Now, the move will make the country's lobby to be allowed to trade in ivory more difficult. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. And to international news now. Dozens of world leaders have come together for the virtual Leaders Summit on Climate. The goal, to find ways to combat climate change. At the invitation of U.S. President Joe Biden, Chinese President Xi Jinping attended the summit and delivered a speech via video link. Take a look.
We must be committed to green development. Green mountains are gold mountains. To protect the environment is to protect productivity, and to improve the environment is to boost productivity. The truth is as simple as that. We need to make sure that a sound environment is there to buttress sustainable economic and social development worldwide.
No nation can solve this crisis on our own, as I know you all fully understand. All of us, and particularly those of us who represent the world's largest economies, we have to step up. You know, those that do take action and make bold investments in their people and clean energy future will win the good jobs of tomorrow and make their economies more resilient and more competitive.
Meanwhile, China and countries in Central and Eastern Europe have joined hands in launching a special event to protect the environment. They've designated 2021 as a year of green development and environmental protection. Our Liu Xixian tells us more.
China and 17 countries in Central and Eastern Europe share what they call a green consensus.
This year, they're forging a path of eco-communication.
During the inauguration, both sides showed commitment in fighting global warming and vowed to strengthen cooperation among 18 countries in carbon reduction and green development.
The Earth is our exclusive and common home, the place where we live and work, grow up our children, love and get loved, project our dreams. Its quality and its health are a prerequisite for our quality of life and for everything we aspire to achieve.
Last year, China pledged to become carbon neutral by 2060. Its manufacturing sector remains a major contributor to energy consumption and emissions. And as the world's largest manufacturer, the goal of carbon neutrality will be one of its biggest challenges in the coming years. This is why experts say China is looking to increase investment overseas in renewable energy.
The 17 CEE countries each have distinctive features for green development and environmental protection. They have abundant resources for biofuel, biogas, geothermal, wind and solar energy.
But like China, these countries are also facing problems with pollution. And some CEE officials say the common goal for better public health is what has led them to push for cooperation with China in green energy. Liu Jiaxing, CGTN, Beijing.
And moving on now, American lawmakers are intensifying their efforts to counter China. A Senate committee has overwhelmingly passed the draft Strategic Competition Act, which takes aim at China on multiple fronts. Now, a separate bill aims to increase America's competitive advantage in technology. Both have strong bipartisan support. Here's CGTN's Nathan King with more.
There's a big debate here in Washington and in Beijing and around the world about whether the US and China are on the brink or in a Cold War. And when the history of these times is written, it may be the Strategic Competition Act, just passed out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee here of 2021, that may signal the start of that Cold War. It calls for a whole government approach to China on every level of a new era of what it calls strategic competition. Now, as the Democrat senator said there, it was a bipartisan vote out of committee. It's going to have to be in the full Senate and go to President Biden's desk soon, we understand. Now, what does it do? Essentially, it calls on the military in the Indo-Pacific to have more assets, to be more forward-facing, right up to China, as you know, as it is in Japan, with the freedom and also the freedom of navigation exercises, so-called, in the South China Sea. It also calls for all government departments to appoint people to basically focus on strategic competition with China. That's all government departments, those domestic and international. Quite incredible. It focuses on economics, changing supply chains. It also focuses on competing with China at the international level in organizations like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization. Quite an incredible reach. And it's not just this bill either. There's others under consideration as well. The China Censorship bill, which will focus on universities having to say how much money they receive from China, which is the biggest investor in universities, although Britain and Canada and Saudi Arabia are up there with them. And also, there are other bills basically putting American money in the industries of tomorrow that they know that China is leading on at the moment. We're talking about 5G, we're talking about lithium batteries for electric cars, we're talking about artificial intelligence. Essentially, what this bill and others are doing is saying, China, we know you're succeeding in modernizing very rapidly, and we see that as a strategic threat. The one exception, of course, is cooperation on climate change. Nathan King, CGTN, just outside the US Capitol.
Well, Australia has cancelled 2 deals between the state of Victoria and China on the Belt and Road Initiative. Beijing has in turn urged Australia to view bilateral relations objectively.
The Australian federal government's decision to veto the Belt and Road Agreement between the Victoria government and China is unreasonable and reckless, and disrupts exchange and cooperation. China expresses its strong dissatisfaction and staunch opposition to this. We urge Australia to abandon the Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice, view China-Australia cooperation objectively and rationally, and stop going further down the wrong path and making matters worse.
Now, Victoria Labour Premier Dan Andrews signed 2 agreements with China in 2018 and 2019, saying they will bring a Chinese investment to his state. But the federal government now says the deals were not in line with Australia's foreign policy. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the deals were cancelled because his federal government doesn't want other levels of government to enter into agreements that conflict with the country's national interests. Now, in the Belgian capital, Brussels, people may have stepped into an artist's portable oasis in the downtown area. When governments around Europe tell people to create a bubble to limit their social contacts during the COVID-19 pandemic, this is probably not exactly what they had in mind.
Hello, my name is Alan Verschweren, and I am the creator of this portable oasis. It is a small greenhouse which I walk around town with, and which has the advantage of allowing me to be in my own bubble while being in the world.
61-year-old Alan Verschweren, Belgian artist and social worker, developed the idea 15 years ago. He was inspired by the lush oasis in Tunisia, where he had previously worked.
When I first created this portable oasis, it was about creating a bubble in which I could lock myself away to cut myself off a world if I found it too dull, too noisy, or too smelly.
In a city where face coverings are mandatory to curb the spread of COVID-19, his invention has gained a new lease of life. The isolation has become much more a way of connecting with others.
It's really cool because it mixes nature and reusability. We can use the world's resources to protect ourselves, therefore we don't need to make masks. We can use nature, which is great.
I think it's not very normal. It's not something you see every day. It's very innovative. I think it's very cool. I don't really know the purpose for it, but it's still very cool.
I think it means maybe we should take care of the environment more. Like, it's very pretty to see plants everywhere. I feel like Belgium's missing a lot of that, so it'd be nice to see people with plants on their heads more often. That'd be cool.
And that's exactly what the artist expected. He hoped to encourage people to take better care of the environment, to reduce the need to protect ourselves from air and noise pollution. And believe it or not, Verschweren said he had asthma and finds breathing within his contraption more comfortable than wearing a face mask. CGTN.
Meanwhile, industrial 3D printers are being used to create affordable and sustainable homes in the U.S. It is hoped the technology can help ease the housing shortage as well as provide accommodation for the homeless.
This is a new generation of startups. It wants to disrupt the construction industry layer by layer by automating production with industrial 3D printers. Combined with software, robots, and new building materials, these smart machines can make homes faster, cheaper, and more sustainable.
What we've done is with 3D printing, we're able to print exactly what we need, so it's effectively zero waste construction, meaning we're eliminating the 3 to 5 pounds per square foot that goes to landfill in a traditional build, which adds up to about 2 to 3 tons of carbon per unit.
3D printing uses autonomous machines to create three-dimensional objects by depositing thin layers of material according to digital blueprints. In recent years, 3D printers have been used to produce everything from toys and auto parts to artificial organs and prosthetic limbs. Now they're being deployed in the construction industry.
We're lowering labor hours by about 90% per unit, but at the end of the day, we're actually hoping to create more work by increasing the productivity by as much as 20 times.
Most of the modules are assembled in the factory, transported by truck to the owner's property, then put into place using a crane. But Mighty Buildings has also plans to produce townhouses and multi-story apartment buildings.
They're assembled in a similar fashion like a Lego set. So it reduces the time that it takes to build a home significantly.
Experts say the sheer magnitude of the housing shortage demands many types of solutions, from loosening zoning restrictions to building more high-rises.
We've seen a significant increase in the homeless population in California. We've seen a significant increase in child poverty and in instability in housing. We've seen overcrowding. We haven't changed the way that we build housing in 30, 40, 50 years. So we need innovation in the materials we use, the processes, and really from soup to nuts how we build housing.
Backed with more than $70 million in venture capital, Mighty Buildings is planning to build more factories with the goal of producing 1,000 units next year. They're also creating software that allows developers to custom design buildings that can be produced with 3D printers. CGTN.
Well, let's move on now. Here's a look at commodity markets today. Oil prices extending losses into a third day as an unexpected build-up in U.S. crude inventories fueled concerns over weak demand. Also, a resurgence of COVID-19 cases in India, the world's third largest oil user, and Japan, the world's number 4 oil importer, raised some fears that a demand recovery could be stalled. Meanwhile, gold prices continue to creep towards that key $1,800 threshold as the U.S. dollar falters with easing treasury yields. Now, traders say what is obviously underpinning the upswing is that dynamic in U.S. treasuries, which of course is sort of pushing lower in the very short term. Well, let's head into a short break now, still coming up on the show. A look at the hoodie that not only keeps you warm, but can light up a room.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden, Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's go to Nigeria now, where an engineer has fabricated an automatic disinfectant hand washing machine using locally sourced materials. He says his goal is to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the north-central city of Jos in Plateau State, Nigeria. Here's correspondent Tessim Akande reporting.
40-year-old engineer William Gang is building his 6th automatic disinfectant hand washing machine. The machine has a sensor that dispenses liquid soap and water and carries out temperature checks without any touch by the user. It also has an alarm system that beeps once a person's temperature exceeds 40 degrees Celsius.
We also want to contribute, just like the doctors are putting effort to curtail the virus. So we felt we, as engineers too, we can also play a role. And then also, if we can able to get support from much more capital from the government, and then so that we can able to do more and establish an industry, so that we can even train the young coming youth, so that we can create job opportunity.
In major cities in Nigeria, like Lagos and Abuja, government and private offices, including shop centers, have invested a lot of money to import automatic disinfectant chambers to ensure COVID-19 protocols are followed. while accessing buildings. But in smaller cities like Jos, where there are limited resources, a bucket of water, soap and a bottle of sanitizer are placed outside public places, but the method has not been very effective. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control says there have been over 160,000 cases of COVID-19 in the country, with over 2,000 deaths. William Yang says he was inspired to construct a machine to try and help the fight against spread of COVID-19. It can be operated using solar energy as well as electricity. Yang distributes the machines to government hospitals and other public places for less than half the price of imported ones. Some Nigerians who have used the machine say it's a welcome development.
The most important about this aspect of this machine is it's locally fabricated in Jos, and the technician handling it is easily accessible in case of technical malfunctioning.
Yang is now building a team of young apprentices to build more machines for the local and export markets. The Nigerian government has pledged nearly $300 million to invest in the health sector to boost innovations and expand its response to tackling COVID-19. The hope is that people like Yang will benefit from such funds to help reduce transmission figures of the disease through their inventions. Tessim Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Now, of course, today marked the 52nd edition of World Earth Day, and this year's theme is Restore Our Earth. Now, reducing consumption of fossil fuels is crucial to mitigating the impact of climate change. Well, in Kenya, one of the country's critical income earners, the flower farms, are now embracing solar energy to power their greenhouses.
The irrigation systems and cold stores in Rift Valley Roses, a flower farm located in Kenya's Nakuru County, require lots of energy input, resulting in high running costs of electricity.
Kenya has a real struggle to supply enough power to the corners, all the corners of the country. We live day to day with day-to-day problems of consistency of power from them, and it's a very high cost to us. We have actually no control on that cost. So we knew the big picture. We had to get more reliant on natural resources of power.
Though Gordon has determined to go solar, the space available to install a solar power system is limited. However, a company, Ecoligo, which was founded to pioneer the global energy transition in emerging markets, came up with an idea of using the farm's water reservoir for photovoltaics. This is Kenya's first ever floating solar system.
It reduces the evaporation of water in the reservoir, so that means you have to pump less water. It also reduces algae growth, which means that you have to use fewer chemicals. It means your water is cleaner, more easy to directly use for, in this case, to water your flowers or other crops. And it also actually increases the yield, the production of each panel, because the water has a cooling effect on the panels.
Though the benefits of installing a solar power system is clear, financing still stands as a challenge when it comes to emerging markets like Kenya. But Ecoligo found a solution.
We used the funds we have raised from our crowd investors to lease the system to Rift Valley Roses over a number of years on a lease-to-own contract. So that's why Rift Valley Roses and other companies have chosen right now to go solar, because they can cut their costs in the middle of the pandemic. They can take a power purchase agreement over a number of years, and later on they will get the solar power plant transferred to them.
As the flower farms weather the storm of the pandemic, the innovative way they use energy is also contributing to a cleaner planet, presenting a double benefit.
We've recovered pretty well from that initial shock of the pandemic, making the house a happy place when you've been stuck inside. Flowers are a natural thing to buy. So the market is improved and our production is there. So we hope obviously it will continue.
Flower exports are one of the top 3 foreign exchange earners for Kenya. In 2019, the sector generated 104 billion Kenya shillings in sales. The adoption of new strategies to save energy could limit the impact of the pandemic on returns and promise long bloom for the sector. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And still in Kenya, a young man in the outskirts of the capital, Nairobi, has come up with a life jacket that powers using solar energy. Now, the hoodie was born out of the need to have a solution to combat frequent electricity blackouts. Here's CGTN's Nick Mudimba with the story.
Bridge Kaflon, a photographer by profession, decided to venture into something different as a side hustle and has come up with a life hoodie, an innovative jacket that is simple but rewarding. Powered by solar energy, the hoodie is a package. Here, he's assembling one of them for a client as he tries to beat the deadline.
Here in Africa, it's rare commodity. It's not something that is everywhere or is locally sold. So it's something new, number one, and people want it. Because this hoodie, apart from just light, it has also, it can charge phones, you see. And it also, you can regulate heat. For example, when there is cold, you can regulate, you can increase, or when it is too much hot, you can reduce.
The hoodie can also light the whole room for up to 5 hours. What he envisioned became to materialize. His dedication and solution-oriented mindset gave birth to an innovation that even for him added value before he impacted his community with a gem.
It was for my studies. I kept on trying until I came to now making my first hoodie, which now I posted and people started seeing it. But now the hoodie that I posted was like the 10th one after trying so many of them. Initially, before solar, it was just a direct to the socket, the first one. Now, people feared being electrocuted. And also people told me that maybe, suppose this thing electrocute somebody, government would come for me. So that is when I started thinking of what I can do. Now that's when this idea of solar came about.
At the moment, the demand for the special wear has attracted even top musicians and artists across Africa.
In our neighboring country, there is Navy Kenzo from Tanzania, and in West Africa, there is Davido. Those are the guys that have shown interest in this thing, and I've dressed them, and they have shown me that actually I can make some money using these.
What started as a societal gap has given birth to this life hoodie. His main desire now is to make sure this hoodie is spread all over the continent. For now, he's actually starting small, but he has big dreams as a young man, knowing that one day the doors will open and of course, he'll thrive in his desire. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, before we leave you today, a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand flat today as investors waited for direction from global drivers, including US jobless numbers and, of course, the outcome of a European Central Bank meeting. Of course, the rand tends to be led mostly by global factors, with local events having a smaller impact on the currency. Meanwhile, Nigeria's naira trading at around $409 naira per dollar at the investors and exporters window. It, of course, has lost about 66% of its value since 2009, when it exchanged at around 149 naira to the dollar. In Kenya, the shilling weakening slightly today. That's amid increasing demand from oil importers, manufacturers, and agricultural importers as well. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo.